Thank you. Good morning. I'm Ricky Hurley, the Vice Chair of Asheville Regional Housing Consortium, and like to welcome you to our January 14th, 2026 meeting. All consortium members and staff are participating virtually today. And to help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801. Again, I'll repeat it, 855-925-2801, and use the meeting code 8763. For everyone else, welcome to you. And for today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 8763, and your phone will be muted and you will hear us speaking live. At that point, speakers will need to hit *3 to enter the speaker queue. And so I'll go through now, introduce all board members and staff leadership. Board members and staff, I'll call your name. Please say a quick hello. Sam Starbaum.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. Sam Starbaum. I'm a planner with the City of Asheville. It's good to see you all again.
Okay. Do we have Jennifer Miranda here with us yet?
She's not able to make it today.
Okay. So Lee Stevens with Henderson County.
Hi, I'm Lee Stevens. I'm Planner 3 with Henderson County. Good morning, everybody.
All right. Thank you. John Connett.
Yep, John Connor here. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Jonathan Jones.
Good morning, Jonathan Jones, Community Development Analyst with Buncombe County.
And I think Matt Card.
Good morning, everyone. Matt Card, Buncombe County.
And then we have Tyler Morrow.
Morning, everybody. Tyler Morrow, Planning and Zoning Director for the Town of Fletcher.
Okay. Do we have anybody with the City of Brevard here with us yet?
Yes, I just joined. Hi, Emily Brewer, Senior Planner.
All right. Welcome, Emily. Savannah Parrish, has she joined yet? Not yet. And I've seen Jacob Comfer.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Jacob Comfer, temporarily interim with Transylvania County. Good to see everyone.
Welcome. Anybody from Black Mountain with us yet? Okay. And then as well as is Rod Honeycutt with us from Madison County. All right. All right. And then quickly, so staff, we have Kaylee, correct? And then
yes, I'm live here.
Yeah, I see you, Kaylee. And then James, you're also with us there at the City Hall, correct?
It's there, James Shelton, Community Development Division Manager.
And then we have Dora, who's new, is lurking in the background there, helping assist us live.
Okay. Yeah, Dora's working a little behind the scenes.
Okay. All right. Do we have quorum? I think we may just reach quorum.
I believe you do.
1, 2, yeah, I think we just got that. Thank you, Emily, for joining in. I think it got us there. Okay, we'll start the first order of business. First thing on the agenda, I have a hard stop at 11. Can we swap item 9 and 8? That's the Marshall Mars Hill membership with the ICF update. And with that, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. From August 27, 2026, you should have a copy of those. Are there any corrections or amendments? All right, if there's none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, John Connor.
And do we have a second?
Sam Starbaum. Yeah, Sam Starbaum, second.
All right, and the vote? I guess, do we need to roll call that one for? And so, see, Sam Star.
Aye.
Let's see here. Lee Stevens.
Aye.
John Connett.
Aye.
Jonathan Jones.
Aye.
Matt Card.
Aye.
Tyler Morrow.
Aye.
Emily Brewer.
Aye.
Jacob Comfer,
Aye.
and Ricky Hurley, aye. All right, so we'll move on to project updates from city staff. I believe Kaylee, you are going to do that for us, correct?
Yes, hi everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Kaylee Pulliam. I manage the home funds here for the city and only have a few updates for you. But starting off, we had Fairhaven Summit. They had their groundbreaking at the end of last year. The groundbreaking was December 4th, so they are now up and running. I was able to attend that with a few of our other partners and consortium members. Just to remind everyone, the total funding amount for this project was $400,000. It's a total unit amount of 77, and out of that 77, 5 of those are home assisted units. And this project is in Buncombe County. I think it's right outside city of Asheville limits, but they did a great job. Commonwealth is partners that we've worked with before, and it's nice to have those units up and running. So next project update, I wanted to highlight the Community Housing Coalition of Madison County. They were able to close out their homeowner replacement funds from fiscal year 21. That was a total funded amount of $205,000. I'd like to take a second and have everyone read over the statement from Chris Watson, the ED over at Community Housing Coalition. So just to highlight this project, as you can see, that picture on the left is from 2018. And this was homeowner replacement, similar to homeowner rehab. That picture on the right is a picture that I took whenever I did our walkthrough out there. And you can see the homeowner and some CHC staff in that top right corner. I just really wanted to highlight this to show the impact that, the home funds have in our community. And, we have the potential to actually change people's lives with these funds. So I think it's really important to highlight all the successes that we have. And I think that is the last of our project updates, Ricky.
So I think we're moving on to the yearly calendar. I think that was a request by the members to kind of look ahead.
Yes, as we're kind of closing out our fiscal year 25, moving into fiscal year 26. Sorry, Ricky.
Say again, I'm sorry. I was looking at the slide and yeah, as we move in.
Sorry.
You talk the consortium calendar, yeah, like the dates. See if everybody was good.
What we'd like to do as city staff would like to go ahead and get our calendar year set for fiscal year 26-27. We're sticking with the same schedule we have been of moving from in-person to virtual. We have the dates and times there. The only thing I want to highlight that's different than what we have been doing is our virtual meetings will be from 9 to 11. Other than that, everything's the exact same. We're trying to stick with that second Wednesday of every month. We would like to get a motion to approve this and get the consortium's input into that.
Okay, with that, I am good with the calendar. I'll ask for a motion to approve this, these upcoming meeting dates.
Before we do that, do we have locations for in-persons?
We don't, we're gonna pretty well stick to proposing the city of Asheville, here at our office on the 6th floor. Unless another consortium member would like to volunteer, to host, we're more than happy to go to another consortium member's, government office. But for now, we're gonna stick with, here at the city hall, in Asheville as the participating jurisdiction. We're happy to host that. But if anyone else would like to volunteer their space, we'll be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, so what city staff plans to do is after this meeting, if these dates are approved, we'll go ahead and get calendar invites sent to everyone and go ahead and create an actual calendar to send to everyone. As of right now, all in person would be at the Cherokee Center where we have had them previously. And this city staff will still work to take care of parking and all things like that. We potentially run into issues hosting at other places just because of the software we have to use to get public input in our streaming, but We would definitely be interested to hear from other consortium members if anyone's ever interested in hosting, but as of right now, it would be the Harris Cherokee Center for in-person, and then virtual will just be what we normally do.
Thank you. Again, I think if Henderson County, somebody in Henderson County or Transylvania County wants to host it, I think they can work with you after this meeting to coordinate that. Okay, with that, I still think we need a motion. If everybody's good with these dates, at least can get locked on our calendars.
So moved.
All right, a second.
I'll
Second.
second.
I think
And then we'll-
Tyler second.
Yeah, I think you got the right from him. All right, so we'll take a vote. Sam Starbaum, Lee Stevens,
Aye.
John Connett,
Aye.
Jonathan Jones,
Aye.
Matt Card,
Aye.
Tyler Morrow,
Aye.
Emily Brewer,
Aye.
Jacob Comfer,
Aye.
and Ricky Hurley is aye. All right, let's keep trucking here. Get back over to the agenda. Sorry, y'all. I'll find it again. My cheat sheet. Sorry, I've got too lost over here on my computer. Too many screens up. All right, so then we're moving on. I think Kaylee, I think you're up for funding recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So as you're all aware, the home applications opened in November and they closed in December. We had the funding committee meet in January and we went over all of the applications. City staff worked to summarize the applications and score them. We then worked with the funding committee members, provided them with our summaries. They had the opportunity to look over all of our applications through our neighborly software. And again, just to recap with everyone, we had 300,000 in tenant-based rental assistance, 400,000 in down payment assistance, and then that 587 number for homeowner rehabilitation. Again, just highlighting those dates, they opened November 10th, they closed December 10th, and the funding committee met January 7th. So starting with the tenant-based rental assistance, we had 5 total applicants, and you can see their requested amount. The funding committee has recommended that we sign Helpmate at $170,000. That's their total requested amount. The Housing Authority at $75,000 and ARC of Buncombe County at $55,000. And that's going to bring down our total amount of $300,000. Before I go on, I ask that everyone holds any comments or questions until the end once we start summarizing everything. Moving on with down payment assistance, we had 2 applicants for that. We had Henderson County Habitat and ABCLT, Asheville Buncombe County Land Trust. Funding committee has recommended that we fund Henderson County Habitat for that total requested amount of $200,000, and that will leave available funds of $200,000 outstanding. Moving on to homeowner rehabilitation, we had 2 applicants for that. Community Housing Coalition of Madison County and the Housing Assistance Corporation. The funding committee has recommended that we fund CHC of Madison County a total of $200,000 and the Housing Assistance Corporation at their total requested amount of $204,000. That means the total recommend $7, and then leaving that outstanding fund for 26-27 projects of $278. So we will have a total home amount of $436 to roll into 26-27 projects. I want to take the time to open the floor if we have any consortium members with any questions or comments.
Okay. I'll go first. Say I'm excited about seeing ARC of Buncombe County on here. It looks like we're reaching various populations here. That's really good.
Yeah, Ricky, I'm not sure if they're a first time applicant to home funding, but this will be the first time they would be awarded home funding. We perform a risk assessment on all our applications when they come in, and what scores you higher is experience with home funding. And what you see on the funding committee recommendations are organizations that have a strong history of participating in the home program. They have good experience, good rapport. But we also do want to extend opportunities as we can to organizations that are new, so that we're expanding our ability to have a larger footprint with home as our environment changes and needs change. So supporting ARC of Buncombe County, so y'all know that they support folks who are disabled and severely low income. So we're excited to partner with them, to potentially partner with them for the first time.
Anyone else got comments or questions before we move on? Don't think we have any. Kaylee, thank you. All right. So I guess we'll go back to a suggested motion. I guess we'll entertain a motion for this.
So moved, John Connor.
All right. And a second.
I'll second, but before I do so, do we need a more substantial motion? Do we need that, or is what John gave good enough?
What he gave is good enough. I mean,
Okay.
I think what we'll have for the record is this presentation is kind of our record of our meeting notes. But you know,
Devil's in the details. I'm not sure with funding. It's always tricky, but if that's good, I'll second.
Okay. And so now we will go through and do a roll call here. Again, Sam Sarbaum,
Aye.
Lee Stevens,
Aye.
John Connett,
Aye.
Jonathan Jones.
Aye.
Matt Card,
Aye.
Tyler Morrow,
Aye.
Emily Brewer,
Aye.
Jacob Comfer,
Aye.
and Ricky Hurley is aye. Let me get back over here to you. Thank you. And so now we'll go on back down to the next item here. And I believe we are, James, you're taking this one, right?
that's correct. Hi, y'all. Again, James Shelton, Community Development Division Manager here at the city. Last year, we undertook in partnership with Land of Sky Regional Council. Hi, Jacob. The 5-year consolidated plan as required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we now have a 5-year plan. Go back. I'm going to talk for a second before I move into what we're going to talk about. So we undertook that 5-year plan, and part of that was the Big Bowen report. That is kind of a touchstone piece of research and data for our entire region to understand our housing landscape and needs. As part of the consolidated plan process, we identified, priority needs and goals as a consortium and as a city here in Asheville. And during that process, we identified the types of activities we would like to undertake in the last year. However, we missed one thing. And what we'd like to do is be able to add affordable rental construction as a priority need and goal as for the consortium and the city of Asheville using home funds. We didn't do that last year because we did not undertake any rental housing construction activities. The consortium didn't propose that. What we should have done was include it as an activity so that we might undertake it in future years. So what this would do would be to add rental construction. And my next agenda item is going to be relevant to this because of what the city is proposing for next year's funding. So you can go to the next slide, Kaylee. Yeah. So we're asking the consortium to approve amending the consolidated plan to add affordable rental construction as a new priority. This will allow city staff to make this amendment, and it will allow home funds to be used for affordable rental construction projects. Now that includes new construction, but also acquisition and substantial rehabilitation on eligible projects for affordable housing. So what that typically looks like is the example that Kaylee gave earlier with Fairhaven Summit, where we were a $400,000 partner with a very large apartment complex, and the home units make up about 5 units in that deal, where we're supporting the total development cost as a equity partner in that. We've got a strong history of doing that. We have another deal that we're working on right now called Apple Ridge, which is in Henderson County. We're supporting them with $940,000 in home funds, and we anticipate closing with that project next month. And that is a big number, 940,000. What we've seen across the board is construction costs in our area, or in the U.S. in general, have gone up. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but the reason why we're going to be proposing rental construction and only rental construction for next year. But what we'd like to do is be able to have the ability to offer that as a project that we would undertake next year. So the timeline would look like, with the consortium's approval, is we would undertake a public comment period to amend the consolidated plan to add this priority need and goal. We would receive public comment for 30 days as required by HUD until February 20th. If we open it on January 20th, we would then take that consolidated plan to City Council for their authorization after that public comment period closes. Anticipated council date being February 24th. With council's authorization, we'll then submit the amendment to HUD to add the priority need and goal of rental construction to the consolidated plan. And then HUD will review that and approve it, hopefully in March. They tend to turn around these pretty simple kind of things fairly quickly. So what we're asking from the consortium today is to authorize the city to amend the 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan to add affordable rental construction as a goal and priority need. And I'll be happy to take any questions and hear anything from consortium members now.
Okay, anybody got any questions, comments before I say anything?
I'm glad to see we've added that. That's a great change, because it's hard to fill a glut when we have such a huge gap in housing. We reserve as much as we want, but when we have such a shortage, you got to build something. So glad to see we're making that priority.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right. So James, is like the last slide, we had a lot of like rehab and I'm sorry, like the previous one Kelly just presented, we had stuff that's like rehab and rental assistance. And so we're just adding so that maybe we can pivot between years. Like, is that what we're trying to do? Is like one year, maybe we're focusing on rental construction, and another year we're kind of focusing on rehab or housing stock preservation or assistance people that are got a need in existing housing. Is that kind of what we're trying to do?
Yeah, so just to touch base on this, from our perspective, internal city staff wise, it can be challenging for our subrecipients to spend down those home funds in a year. So what we've seen has happened is we pile on different funding years. So what this would do is open up the possibility for us, like Jacob said, to add additional housing stock. The new construction also lets us spread those home funds throughout the consortium. We've had projects in Transylvania County, Henderson County, Buncombe County. So this really lets us expand that. And it helps us to not bog down our current subrecipients by adding funding. So what would be ideal is if we alternate years. So one year we'll do the tenant base, the rehab, and the down payment assistance. The next year we'll focus more on that larger multifamily new construction that gives city staff more capacity and our other subrecipients. And then the next year after that, we'll go back to that TBRA, DPA, and rehabilitation.
I think that sounds like a great strategy. I think that does a little bit of both and not pressure everybody. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Jonathan, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, and I guess it might be worth discussing that strategy would mean we would be using home funds on an alternating schedule for individual rehab, TBRA, down payment assistance on an alternating schedule with new unit construction. It means home funds would likely be out of the field for like an annual LIHTC application. So we might have a project that comes in one of our member counties that's ready to use those funds this year and wouldn't be able to access home funds because they simply aren't available. So that would be the trade-off to that strategy, is that the timing of some of our projects happens on an annual cycle based on tax credit awards, and we would be kind of going off the path from being able to make home funds available.
I would say that's my one big concern with the alternating schedule. I have no problem with this consolidated plan amendment. I think it's great that we're adding that in. But I do have that concern about being able to support projects as they apply for LIHTC awards, because that does make a huge difference.
So are you saying that your concern is around the off years where we would offer no rental construction financing?
That's correct. Or that it would be off cycle so that we would not have the funding established to be included as part of their application. The preliminary application deadline is in January. So, and then final in May. So if we're not talking about funding during this year, until, I don't know, a November release, that makes it kind of challenging to get it in line with the LIHTC award process.
I think that's an interesting point, Emily, because with our anticipated, we'll talk about this in the next agenda item, because what we're going to talk about is the actual funding for next year. That how can we better align our funding cycles and application cycles and award process for rental construction with that LIHTC cycle? I think that's a really good point, because we're kind of already behind now, because what we're looking to award is funding for our 26 to 27 grant year, which we don't have yet, but we anticipate getting that. But we do want to run an application cycle to move it forward sooner rather than later. But the application cycle would run like this spring, which is not really in line with LIHTC deals that are trying to come in January. So that is a good point. And I think that probably warrants further discussion in terms of consortium strategy over the next couple of years, because we could certainly look at realigning the timing of these funding cycles for sure. It's a really good point.
Anyone else? Those are good feedback. Thank you, Jonathan and Emily. All right, with that, there's a suggested motion on the screen. Does anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we recommend the city of Asheville as the participating jurisdiction for the consortium, amend our consolidated plan to add affordable rental construction as a goal and priority need.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
All right, I'll do roll call here. Sam Starvon.
Aye.
Lee Stevens.
Aye.
John Connett.
Aye.
Jonathan Jones.
Aye.
Matt Card.
Aye.
Tyler Morrow. Emily Brewer.
Aye.
Jacob Comfort.
Aye.
And Ricky Hurley is aye. Right. So, James, I think you're bringing us to the next one, right?
Right. That's right. So the next item is relevant to, thank you all for that. So with that consolidated plan amendment, should it be, go through the whole process, get it approved by HUD over the next couple of months? What we would be looking to do with next year's funding. So just to touch real quick on FY26 anticipated funding. We usually get about $1 million each year. So that rainbow chart, I guess you would call it there on the right, is how you would break out typically $1 million in funding. 100 grand would go 10% toward our administration and planning that pays for Kaylee's salary, pays for some of mine. And then 15% is set aside for community housing development organizations. HUD automatically just portions that out with our grant every year. And that is typically for rental housing construction, but it can also be for single family construction where the subrecipient is the builder and they own the property and they're selling it to other organizations. Typically each year we haven't had a whole lot of Chodo uptake the last few years. So that set aside, we're able to, after a couple of years, just change it to regular entitlement, and it can be used however we need to. And we've done that for past years. This year where we've freed up that Chodo set aside. So that's where you see some of our funding kind of freeing up this year and moving to be available to roll forward. So with that, we would expect about $900,000 in anticipated 2026 awards to be able to go out with the unawarded funding from this year's cycle. And that's rolled forward from other prior years as well, about 436. We would look to note it about $1.3 million in the FY 2026-2027 award cycle. And what we are proposing is that the remaining 2025 allocation, along with the 2026 home award, be directed to support affordable rental construction, with the anticipation of supporting one project via a competitive notice of funding opportunity. The reason we're saying one project, and that's anticipated, we may do more than one, but what we've seen over the past few years is that construction costs have soared, while our home grant has also shrunk at the same time. So with the goal of awarding one project, the full award amount, so long as the underwriting and the subsidy laying review and everything works out that they actually need that full award, it helps us to be able to have a significant impact on a project or projects in our region. Also, by only running a single program in the 2026-2027 home grant year, we'll have the capacity here at the city to effectively manage existing grant agreements. So by not running 3 different programs for TBRA, down payment assistance, and home repair, just focusing on this one activity type, will give us that kind of bandwidth to manage our existing grant agreement, as well as shepherd those subrecipients who y'all just voted to approve through the contracting process, which does take time. We've also got a new subrecipient this year with ARC of Buncombe County. We want to make sure that they're getting technical assistance and the support that they need to move forward. And it allows us with a rental construction program to dedicate appropriate resources to underwriting, subsidy layering review, as well as the closing process. If any of y'all have ever worked on multifamily deals, it can take a lot of time, a lot of back and forth with developers and other funding partners to get a deal across the line, and it's time consuming. So making it worth our while with the rental construction activity only for next year's award cycle would help us be able to effectively work with the resources that we have. Before I bring a suggested motion up, does anyone have any questions or comments on the FY 26 to 27 funding?
So does the 436 incorporate the of rollover? Is that incorporated from both Chodo dollars that are freed up and the rollover that we had from this funding allocation that we just made?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And it includes this past year, it's not the 26th, the upcoming funding. It includes the Chodo set aside from this year, because the activities that we're funding this year do not qualify as Chodos. So we have a 15% set aside in this year's grant that is sitting there that we'll be able to roll forward to a Chodo activity in the future. So that's where that's included, and it wasn't allocated during this year's funding cycle.
Okay, thank you.
So just a reminder to you guys, typically our position in the capital stack for rental construction deals, we're in the 10 to 20% range of the total development cost. So the characteristics of a project we were going to be, anticipate funding would be in the 13 million to 26, about the $13 million range. Is 13 to 15 million is kind of where we're going to be looking to be.
Anyone else have comments, questions? All right, James, I guess you can bring up the suggested motion for us. All right, and do you have that one? Does anybody want to make that motion?
I'll do, John Connor, I move, make the motion that is on the screen that we move forward with, as presented.
All right, a second.
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll do roll call here. Sam Starbaum.
Aye.
Lee Stevens,
Aye.
John Connett,
Aye.
Jonathan Jones.
Aye.
Matt Card,
Aye.
Tyler Morrow,
Aye.
Emily Brewer,
Aye.
Jacob Comfort,
Aye.
and Ricky Hurley is aye. All right. So I think that gets us down to where we flip flopped. I think it's 8 and 9. Is that correct, James?
Yes, sir. So we're gonna now discuss the addition of Mars Hill and Marshall to the consortium. I know as a reminder that we've operated for perpetuity as if they were members, and there's been many efforts over the years to officially add them. However, according to HUD, as we discussed at our last meeting, HUD does not have record that they were formally added to the consortium. So what we are doing right now is we're getting a clear process for how we're going to add them. So we are going to be drafting a resolution for each consortium member to take to their governing bodies. All Asheville Regional Housing Consortium governing members should take this resolution to their governing body as an agenda item, which will be to say that they are approving the addition of Mars Hill and Marshall to the joint cooperating agreement for the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. We'll also be providing a similar resolution to Marshall and Mars Hill, where they will need to do the same thing, where their governing bodies provide them with authorization to join the consortium. All current ARHC members must approve Marshall and Mars Hill's addition. That does not necessarily mean that the governing body's vote must be unanimous, but each member government within the consortium must approve it. So if one of our consortium member governments does not approve, then the motion, then not a motion, but then the activity to add them will not be able to move forward. So we anticipate distributing that resolution to you guys in February. All members will need to return signed resolutions by May 13th. So that gives you a couple of months to get an agenda request in to your governing body. And then we'll, with those resolutions returned back to city staff, we'll be able to submit that documentation to HUD. They need it by June. So we need to get that into HUD before the end of our program year, which is June 30th. So we want to get that in time to them. And then we'll, as Kaylee discussed earlier, we'll have our first consortium meeting on August 12th, 2026, for the 2026-27 fiscal year, with Marshall and Mars Hill participating as full-fledged members. Boy, is that a not fun process. Yeah. But this is the direction we've been given from the federal government. Any questions?
You had said that it is a couple of months, and by looking at a calendar, that is right. But the council agendas are already filling up for spring for us. There are a number of things that can always get in the way of a government timeline. Is that June deadline is hard and fixed, or like, so if something doesn't happen by June, is that to say that we have to wait another year?
Correct.
Or okay, cool. Well, we'll put the pedal on the floor then.
My hope and expectation is this should really be a consent agenda item for anyone. Doesn't really warrant any kind of like new business. You're really just giving the consortium the authority to add new members.
Well, it's an election year, so it should goes out the window.
Yeah.
thank you, James, for that. And hopefully everybody can get this on board and we can get Marshall and Marcel back in the fold again.
But I appreciate y'all. And we'll be in touch with you guys. That's anticipated February. If we can get that done before the end of this month, we're obviously want to get that done sooner. But you'll want to get agenda requests into your governing bodies to have this brought forward to them. And then we'll just need that signed resolution back from your either town manager or county manager.
Thank you.
So that's it for that. That's our process. So we're going to move forward to get that done. Thank y'all.
All right. And so then, James, I think this gets us up to the ICF update for information, correct? That's our last item today.
Yes, sir, it does. So that concludes all of our business here today for the consortium. This next portion is going to be brought to you guys from ICF Incorporated. They are a consulting firm that we've brought on board to help us roll out the Home ARP program. So just as a quick reminder, that was an additional allocation of home funding that we received back in 2021 to the tune of about $4 million. And they'll walk you through just as a reminder of what this program does, what our allocation plan looks like. But at this point, I'll hand it over to our colleagues at ICF to introduce yourselves who are on the call right now, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Carl. I'm a lead community development specialist at ICF. You will be hearing my voice and seeing my face today. I'll present the materials, but I also want to acknowledge I have two of my colleagues on the line, Jennifer Miller and Jocelyn Naples. We're very excited to be here with you all to give you a Home ARP update. You can go to the next slide. So James already covered the first bullet. You have a little bit close, almost $5 million in Home ARP funds. We're working with the city and the consortium to help you guys roll out those dollars. We're currently developing applications and NOFAs for the rental housing development, and we anticipate that release to be in March 2026. And we will have a Home ARP supportive services NOFA that will be separate and will follow after the rental housing NOFA. In addition, we'll also talk about how the best use for Home ARP supportive services and our recommendation and suggestion on how to broaden and use all the flexibilities in the Home ARP supportive services that the notice gives. Next slide. So as James mentioned, we'll do a Home ARP overview to talk about what Home ARP is, how it's different, and we'll talk about the program design considerations for rental housing and a program design considerations for supportive housing. Next slide. To start us off, Home ARP overview. So really the hallmark difference and the standout feature of Home ARP is that it's primarily targeted to 4 qualifying populations. So you have those experiencing homelessness, individuals and families at risk of homelessness, individuals and families fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, and then other populations at greatest risk of housing instability. Those first 2 qualifying populations come from the McKinney-Vento Act and is typically used and adopted in both your Emergency Solutions Grant or ESG and Continuum of Care funds. So many partners are already working within what this means to be homeless or at risk of homelessness. The fleeing and attempting to flee domestic violence comes from the Violence Against Women's Act, or VAWA, and the human trafficking definition comes from a Victims Protections Act. So those 3 qualifying populations, like who that is and what that means and how to document and all those things come from other federal regulations and sources. And then Home ARP has a special QP4 or qualifying population 4 of the other populations. And this is really focusing on 2 distinct groups. Those that have experienced literal homelessness in the past, they're receiving services that are time limited, that are ending, and they're likely to become homeless again. And there's still a continued need of services. And this other group where folks have some of the characteristics that we acknowledge is at risk of homelessness, in addition to having lower incomes, 50% AMI and below, or 30% AMI and below, with severe cost burden. So that's kind of the environment of when we're thinking about using these funds. This is the groups of folks that we are intending to benefit from these use of funds. Next slide. In addition, all the participating jurisdictions are able to select or set reasonable preferences, which would allow one of the qualifying populations to have priority over another qualifying population, or a subpopulation of a qualifying population to have priority over others. And these are based off of the data analysis that's done in your allocation plan. It identifies your gaps and needs in your community. As is now, the allocation plan does not have any identified preferences. Your gaps and needs demonstrated a high need and gaps for all 4 qualifying populations, and having no preferences at this time does allow for the broadest possible access to all projects for all 4 qualifying populations. If you were to change this, and you can change it, that's the beauty of fun stuff for HomeARP, is you can change it. You would do a substantial amendment to the allocation plan, and that can be done at any time before commitment to any of the projects. Next slide. So real fast, you can use HomeARP funds for rental housing, tenant-based rental assistance, supportive services, and non-congregate shelter. As you already know from the key takeaways in our introduction, you can go to the next slide. We're using the funds are allocated for supportive services at about $1 million, development of affordable housing for a little over $3 million, and for admin and planning at a little over $700,000. All of the funding must be expended by September 30th, 2030, and this is a one-time funding source. So this does not get reallocated again. We don't have any more allocations coming. HomeARP is one time, and it all has to be expended by September 30th, 2030. Next slide. So we're going to talk specifically about HomeARP rental housing. This is the general timeline that we are using to get the NOFA out the door and select projects. We anticipate an application will be released in March and open through April 2026. We will provide an information session to orient folks to the fun nuances of HomeARP funding, and we'll also provide TA support to work with applicants to decide if HomeARP is a good fit for their project or not. In June and July, we'll bring preliminary recommendations to this body so you can see who applied and what our recommendation is for potential funding, with the hopes of July, August, getting through all of the other pieces and coming to authorize written agreements. Next slide. Just to touch on some of the HomeARP nuances, especially for HomeARP rental housing. As mentioned in the beginning, one of the key features and hallmark things of HomeARP is the qualifying population. So instead of focusing on income targeting of like 30% AMI or 50% AMI for the units, you're looking at someone's living situation or their qualifying population status for their eligibility to enter the rental housing. So that's a steep learning curve in some regards. But as mentioned before, there are other agencies and bodies that are using these definitions. So there's stuff out there to use and leverage to make that an easier and less steep of a hill. In addition, you can develop 2 types of units. You have your units that are restricted for qualifying populations, and at least 70% of your HomeARP assisted units must be restricted for qualifying populations. And there's flexibility to use up to 30% to develop restricted units for low-income households, and that's households that are up to 80% AMI. What's great about HomeARP is that unlike other funding sources where there is a per unit subsidy maximum, HomeARP can pay up to 100% of the eligible cost for the unit, which gives you a little bit more flexibility to more deeply invest in a per unit basis. Regardless of how much you're putting into the project, how much rehab is happening, all of those things, the HomeARP compliance period is a flat 15 years. And one of the other caveats is that HomeARP allows you to use operating cost assistance if you're projecting low rental revenues to help with project viability. And we're going to dig in a little bit deeper on the operating cost assistance here in the next slide. So ICF has been supporting multiple participating jurisdictions in their HomeARP implementation, and some of the things we have seen nationwide is a general shyness to pursue the operating cost assistance subsidies or the capitalized operating cost assistance reserves in general. That comes down to Home ARP being a one-time funding, especially when you're trying to size a reserve. If you don't size your reserve correctly the first time, there's not another bucket of money that's going to be coming in to be able to increase that reserve if more operating assistance is needed. And generally, most participating jurisdictions are not just sitting on piles of money to add in operating assistance and as needed if it wasn't sized correctly. Also, there's not a lot of clarity or safe harbor practices in place from the federal government on how to size, what's appropriate and reasonable, what are the compliance and monitoring going to look like, and what is the appropriate reserve management standards. So there's a little bit of risk from all levels, both the city and the consortium managing it, and the developer and the owner being able to utilize it, what it could look like, and if it will meet the requirements of HUD. So for those reasons, generally, we see folks not offer the operating cost assistance. Also, you're looking for projects that are a little bit more fully baked and a little bit more financially feasible when possible to fund with the Home ARP funds. And when you have this negative and deficits that you're trying to make up for, those projects tend not to score high enough to end up being funded. That's what we've seen. So we've seen some PJs actually offer the operating cost assistance. Very few applicants even apply for it. And those that do apply tend to be some of the weaker applications for the project funding. You can go to the next slide. As we mentioned before, we are underway in drafting the rental housing NOFA and trying to make sure that we get some of the projects to score highly that would be a great use of these funds. We are looking at your home scoring rubric and providing some changes and tweaks for our recommended home ARP scoring framework. So we're looking at home, you're looking at your developer experience and financial capacity all in one. We kind of split that out into two, really looking at your full applicant team experience, especially with use of federal funds. Home ARP is definitely not like your first time federal fund use. For development, there's a lot of pieces that require a lot of attention and details and documentation to remain compliant. You're looking at folks that might have experience owning and operating projects that have served one or more of the qualifying populations, because this might be a different population than the average developer is used to working with. For financial capacity, we're really looking at the viability of the project, looking at the pro forma, looking at past financials and the financial statements of the applicant, and adding a little bit more points there for the financial capacity piece. Project readiness, it's like, how can we add points to be as shovel ready as possible for the Home ARP award? And there's different details of what the project readiness will look like, but we want to be able to identify certain features of a project that would be more ideal to invest in so that we can move the project forward before the deadlines. The projected rent and income targeting and the location, design, and amenities, you see those are the same amounts, same titles as you would see in home. The projected rents and income targeting would really look at if there's any project-based rental assistance possibly. And in addition to your typical location, design, and amenities, you're also looking at unit size needs that were identified in your allocation plan that show a good use of the funds to meet the needs that you all have identified in that accepted plan. Next slide. So that's our rental housing. You have a general timeline. You have our general scoring framework and our general recommendation about the program design. Now we'll move over to the Home ARP supportive services and talk about a little bit about the program design there. So the allocation plan described the greatest need for Home ARP supportive services to be used for substance use and mental health services, which is a fantastic use of funds. There are 27 eligible costs under Home ARP supportive services that really truly allows you flexibility to fill in gaps and needs for your qualifying populations in the consortium areas. Knowing that there is changes in the federal landscape on what's going to be funded and how it's going to be funded, especially as it comes to rental assistance in your ESG or continuum of care program, Also recognizing the COC, their Continuum of Care Strategic Plan, which identified short and medium-term rental assistance with case management, that rapid rehousing model as a high need and a desired thing to expand. There's a recommendation we have here to broaden the eligible services for what people can apply for when they're designing their home ARP supportive services. So they can provide the substance abuse and mental health services and also provide some short and medium-term rental assistance and other case management services to be more holistic, to provide better outcomes for the qualifying populations. It's a little bit easier to provide mental health and substance abuse services if somebody has a place to live, possibly has a little bit of assistance with their rent, and to provide flexibility and some financial assistance pieces. So that's our recommendation so far with the Home ARP Supportive Services program design. Any changes in what types of eligible costs are under Home ARP Supportive Services does not require any changes to your allocation plan. You funded this, the Home ARP Supportive Services line item, and how and which eligible services and that you are going to incorporate in your implementation will show up more in your no-fund materials and your policies and procedures, and it wouldn't affect your allocation plan. So there wouldn't be that whole process of amending. Next slide. And that's it for me. So again, $4.7 million. ICF's here to help try to get it out the door. Application open March 2026 for rental housing. Supportive services to follow, and we highly recommend broadening the eligible services for Home ARP supportive services for that NOFA. I will hand it back to you all and open to any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. Do we have any questions or comments from consortium members? I see hands raised. Emily, I saw your hand up first, and then John.
Sure. Thanks so much for this presentation. I think it's really important that we strategize on this important pot of money. I know I keep harping on this in this meeting, but I do have concerns about the timeline and how it interacts with for rental, how it interacts with the low-income housing tax credit program. I mean, it's the largest source of funding, and it's for rental housing, and it's incredibly important. This year with the CDBG DR funds and LIHTC following the same timeline, there's a lot of uncertainty in amounts of awards. And so, like, for example, I know of a project here in Transylvania County that will be going after funding in this round of LIHTC, but there's a lot of uncertainty about how much LIHTC they could get and how they can be most competitive, but also how much CDBG DR funding they could get as part of that. And so when I look at the timeline for this funding, which is incredibly important, when we're talking about a decision in June, it doesn't quite match up with when we would need that full application for LIHTC is due in May, and then they don't find out about award amounts until August. And so it doesn't meet the timeline to be included in the award, but it also doesn't meet the timeline to cover any gaps from the award. So I'm just a little concerned about the timeline as it relates to this incredible funding source for us, which is further complicated by the DR funds being attached to it.
Absolutely. I hear you. I think we're trying to get it out the door as fast as possible. I think that our timeline is conservative. And I think that there might be some flexibility in providing something to the state that, you know, if there's preliminary possibility of funding something, is there a way to finagle it with LIHTC? I think we've gone back and forth on whether the timing is going to work out for this funding round. And I don't know if James wanted to add any more to that. But we recognize that the timing isn't perfectly aligned with the largest state funding LIHTC funding round.
Stephanie, could I add one thing before James chimes in? James, could I add something just quickly to that too? So echoing absolutely what Stephanie said. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Miller, also with ICF. I think because home ARP is such a unique funding source, as you've heard today, and probably already knew to some extent with the QPs and just all this nuance, a lot of grantees that we've worked with and continue to work with are very eager to see what applications come in the door. How are they characterized? How are they structured? Are they coming in requesting home ARP funds in full? You know, as Stephanie talked about, there's flexibility with this source that you don't see in others where you could potentially fully fund a project. So having that timeline a bit earlier can also give, you know, some foresight there of what's coming in the door. Are these candidates for LIHTC funding or not? And as Stephanie said, certainly, you know, working with James and his team, you know, being as adaptable as possible. And then the other piece I would say, so I'm also based in North Carolina. I'm in the Raleigh area. I've been here a couple of years, but I'm a Chicago native, and I worked at the state of Illinois HFA for several years. That was a tax credit allocator, and we often coordinated informally with cities and counties who had home funds or home ARP funds around, you know, well, what are we thinking we're going to fund? Because often before those actual applications came in, even for tax credits, we used to do a preliminary application process. So we would have some insight into what was likely coming in the door and could start to have informal coordination conversations. So just wanted to put that out there. Sorry, James, I'll turn it over to you.
It's a really, really good point, Jennifer. And thank you both. I think, you know, when we engaged with ICF, we had this conversation about timeline, and it's a tough, there's a pros and cons to moving sooner rather than later. We do have a 4-year timeline. September 30th is when we need to have these funds not awarded, but drawn and paid out. So that means we've got to go through the underwriting process, we've got to go through the contracting, and then actually getting to construction and drawdown by September 2030. So, you know, we've had deals here at the consortium that we've awarded funds in, you know, 2021, 2022 that have broken ground this, you know, the past year. So we understand that the timeline for construction projects can be quite long. And I think in the scoring that our team has put together, in terms of project readiness, that's 15 points that you see there. That's not something we typically put in our regular home scoring notice, because we do anticipate often that these things can take a long time. But the characteristic of this notice will be a little bit different in that we are looking for deals that are not necessarily shovel ready, but they're ready. They're more ready than what we typically would see. So it's a tough weighing, Emily, and I really appreciate you bringing it to us that, you know, does it align with the LIHTC cycle? Likely not, but I think that there's still going to be plenty of opportunity for us to get these funds into a worthy project in our consortium area that's going to be able to get units off the ground within the required time frame. And if we put a notice out and we don't get, you know, the right applications and it doesn't work out, we'll do another one in November. We'll go out and look again at a time when it actually will cycle correctly with LIHTC. We'll be a little bit tighter under the gun, and we might have to revisit how we do our point scoring to really hone in on that readiness, because we'll be up under an even tighter timeline. But I think we've got really good help with ICF. I think the city's prepared to support these projects. But I share your concerns around, you know, fitting into the LIHTC cycle and the capital stack of those LIHTC deals in our area.
Yeah, and if I can just add on, the reason why it's so important to me is that we have one project in Transylvania County for rental production. And the major source of funding and the biggest piece of that is LIHTC. And so if we're trying to spread the wealth of this, of the home ARP funds into all 4 counties, it's going to be really hard to get it in Transylvania and Madison because we just don't have as many projects. And so when there is one project, we have to throw all of our resources and support towards it. But when it doesn't match up with a funding cycle, it becomes incredibly hard for us to be able to be a part of any of these other funding sources. So that's just why I keep harping on it. And I apologize for taking up everybody's time, but that's something that I'm particularly sensitive to this year.
No, it's a very thoughtful point, and you're not harping at all. We appreciate the input. And I think as James said, it's not uncommon for home ARP grantees to do more than one round because it's hard to anticipate what's going to come in for this very exciting but very strange funding source. So yeah, appreciate the thoughts.
Thank you. John, I think you had your hand raised, and then John. So John Connett and then Jonathan Jones.
Yeah, just a quick question as it relates to putting these projects together. If our partners or us as members have questions, are we calling City of Asheville staff or are we calling ICF directly? And if we're calling ICF, can we make sure the group shares contact information?
Yeah, I think in terms of technical questions about the Home ARC program, IPF staff are certainly a great resource for that. In terms of timeline and rollout, you can come straight to me at the city for how we're going to be operating and getting this off the ground, John. So we'll share the full contact information at the end of this call. Can you take that as an action item, Kaylee, please? So we'll make sure you have Jennifer and Stephanie, as well as Alita, who's another team member who's not with us today on the ICF team.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, so I would certainly echo Emily's concern about the timing of investing these funds in projects to line up with other resources that are out there in the community. I do like the premise of maybe having multiple rounds for consideration and maybe lining up a couple of those cycles in short order over the next year or two being cognizant of that timeline of 2030. I did have a question for the ICF staff about what they're seeing in other communities about projects that are being funded. Is it usually one big project, or are they finding smaller or diverse projects that have other funding resources to pair that with? Is Home ARP doing the heavy lift, or is it another one of those home resources that's like a 10% investment there?
Mm-hmm. I think we're seeing stuff all over the map. It really depends on the allocation amount of the participating jurisdiction. Because if you have a big dollar amount, you can invest more deeply, and you can be the main investor into a project.
Right.
We have seen folks tend to try to fund the least amount of projects as possible, just because the Home ARP compliance is so tedious, and it's a lot to ask of your owners and owners of the properties. So folks tend to not do 2 units in one thing and a 4 unit in another, but do a sizable amount into a specific project and kind of limit their funding to 2 to 3 projects, depending on the size of their allocation, just for the burden of the monitoring and compliance, both staff and for your developers and owners.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, do you want to add anything to that from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think what you said is absolutely right. I think we've seen comparable cities with in terms of comparable allocation size and comparable housing needs, due to large rental projects, and that's sort of it. We certainly, as Stephanie said, would encourage, maximizing the funds as much as possible, given the compliance burden. That's a one-time allocation, of course. But it's really up to what comes in, what you feel most comfortable with, how far your allocation can spread for that. As Stephanie noted in the presentation, we've seen very few folks actually doing the operating assistance or the co-car, whether it's them even offering that as an option, or they offer it and nobody takes them up on it. So I think I've only heard of 2 entities that have been doing that. One is the state of Texas, and what they expressed to us was that they were essentially forced to do that by their leadership. It wasn't something they were necessarily keen to do, and they're kind of learning as they go along on the structuring of that. And then the state of Kentucky is doing that as well, but they were sort of pushed in that direction based on some other subsidy money that fell through. So out of the scheme of all these different grantees, just 2, to my knowledge, that are actually doing the operating assistance piece. We've interacted with some folks that are doing supportive services, and Stephanie, please chime in if you had a different experience, but the folks I'm aware of doing funding that are funding a few different awards generally, but the rental has been concentrated in a fewer number of projects with, more units. One other thing I'll add just for context, so HUD has issued some guidance on home ARP, which is available through the HUD Exchange. That's a corollary website to the main HUD website. And ICF developed some of those things early on. We and some other technical assistance providers have been contracted by HUD to provide an array of services, technical assistance, product development, things like that. Unfortunately, with the DOGE review earlier this year, home ARP TA that was paid for by HUD at no cost to grantees was canceled en masse. And so I'm sharing that to say that there's not a lot on the HUD Exchange in terms of materials. There's a lot around sort of front end program design for home ARP and allocation planning, and there's some materials, but there isn't a whole lot around compliance monitoring, for example. And so, the city is well positioned through direct work with ICF. We were one of those main providers working on those things when that work was active, to take what we already have, to adapt from the other clients we have worked with, so that your program can be as effective and efficient as possible. So just as you continue down this path, that will come up periodically in terms of, well, what's out there from HUD? The answer may be not a whole lot, but we are here to support you and ensure that your program has the strongest base and support possible so it can run successfully.
I appreciate that context. I think part of the other question that comes up with this specific funding is also to, again, Emily's point about the sort of spreading the wealth within the 4 counties and jurisdictions within that. The home consortium is not just a single city or an entity, but it's a collaboration amongst 4 counties. So making sure that there are opportunities to leverage that where we can when there are projects in those other areas. And I guess one last clarifying question is about the short-term rental assistance. We, in the original feedback from the community, there was concern about the ability to use that rental assistance, just the limited number of units that would accept home rents. So just want to sort of put that out there as something to be aware of as we consider shifting our funding priorities.
Sure. And I think that is a typical feedback loop that you hear from folks about rental assistance, because it is tied to fair market rate for the home ARP supportive services rental assistance, different than your tenant-based rental assistance, where there's some flexibility in setting some of those rents. But what we have seen over the course of time is due to funding at risk of being completely removed, or the full use of the funding have to change what they're supposed to do, and just the dearth of rapid rehousing funds in the area, it might not end your homelessness in all of the consortium, but it could be very effective in some of the qualifying populations to be housed for a short period of time just to get restabilized. And how and when and how that program design does work out will kind of demonstrate how we build the project. Also, at the time that most people were going through their consultation process, we had CV funds, ESG CV and CDBG CV public services funds. The ESG CV funds were larger than anticipated, I think, for some folks, and folks were struggling to spend down a lot of those across nationally because of FMR issues or the annual ESG. So there was a lot of rapid rehousing funds when home ARP first came out that are no longer in existence. So some of those things, it's always hard to find, even folks with vouchers struggle to find units to use their vouchers, but it doesn't mean that vouchers aren't needed. Same is true for the home ARP rental assistance, but I appreciate you uplifting that as something to be watching for and ways that we can try to shift to overcome that issue of the rent is really high and it's hard to find things. How can we best use these funds to support folks? We hear it, and thank you for bringing that up.
Really good comment, guys. Really, really very, very valid things that we're having to take into consideration as we're trying to move this funding out. Obviously, it would have been great if we were doing this 2 years ago. And we could have these projects going, in the hopper before Helene. And I know our context has changed significantly since then. But we'll be looking to y'all for support and feedback as we move forward with this program. Are there any other comments or questions for the ICF team since we have them here today? Just in the presentation. All right. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Jennifer, so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate y'all's support. Y'all been a really good team to work with, and we look forward to working with y'all over the next couple of years too to roll this out. With that, our agenda is concluded. Ricky had to drop off, so we do not have a chair or vice chair currently present with us right now. I would ask, we're now at the point of our agenda for public comment. Would a consortium member please volunteer and say something about public comment being open?
Public comment is now open.
Thank you, John. Logan or Dora, do we have anyone signed up for public comment, or are there any callers that would like to provide public comment at this time? No callers on the line. Okay, can I ask the consortium member to please close public comment?
Public comment is now closed.
Receiving no comment during today's consortium meeting. We do not need a roll call vote for adjourning, but at this point, we may adjourn. If a consortium member could say something about being adjourned, since we don't have a chair or vice chair.
One question before we adjourn, or one request for our May meeting. I don't know whether other consortium members have received concerns or comments from our nonprofits, and then this is just information for us from the Asheville staff. I've received a couple of concerns about once we award money, some of the processes to get that money out the door, and some concerns about, I know we're working with a consultant to help do all the paperwork on the back end. Can we get a presentation about how all that's working and what processes the nonprofits have to go through once the money is awarded by the consortium? My understanding is a couple of folks had ended up not taking the money because the process may be a little bit arduous. Again, secondhand comments, but I'd like to have a conversation in May if we could.
Certainly, and I think I'm aware of some of the specific circumstances that you might have in mind, John.
Yeah.
I will agree with you that some of, not talking about our ICF team who's been on the call today, but we have had some negative experience with some of the consultants that we've worked with, particularly with how they address and work with recipients of home funding, and we're aware of that. But I'd be happy to have that conversation in May. If you could make a note, Kaylee, that in May, let's talk about how our contracting process and how we go about working with consultants. I think just to highlight for you, John, moving forward with the proposed fiscal year 26 and 27 awards, where we're looking to do, y'all voted today to just do that rental construction program in the next funding year. We're not going to be looking to bring on consultants for that assistance. We definitely want to be, I feel like Kaylee's got enough experience. We have enough quality folks here at the city to be able to do that in-house. So we will be moving forward without consultant help for that funding cycle in the 26-27 year. But I appreciate you highlighting that, John, and believe me, I share with you that I'm aware of those negative experiences with some consultants that we've partnered with.
Thank you. I think it's just good for all of us to know. We may be hearing from our nonprofits and our consultants about what happens after we approve the funding. It'd be good for us to know.
And John, another quick thing to add is for our down payment assistance, rental rehab, and TBRA contracts, that's something that city staff does. That's just me. We have no consultant help with that. So, and like James said, now that I've been in the position for going on 2 years, we feel comfortable being able to maintain that in-house for the new construction project.
Good. Thank you. It'd be great just to,
Then, One more thing to ask consortium members. I spoke with Ricky earlier this week and he mentioned having like a quick input session, just an overview of home, all the different programs, kind of like a training session, unofficial consortium meeting. Is that something any other members would be interested in having? Is that something you'd like me to open up to everyone or just specific people? I know we have a lot of new members on the consortium from this past year, so is that something anyone would be interested in?
I think Hendersonville would, and I'd like to bring a staff member. So yes, I think we would.
Henderson County as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I would-
Brevard.
I'd be interested in doing that too.
Great.
Yeah.
I will be in touch with y'all and we'll get that on the books. Just an informal, just info session, an overview of home in general. So
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, thank y'all. It does not require a roll call vote to adjourn, so we are adjourned. Y'all have a happy new year and thank you so much for joining today. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks.